Alright everyone, welcome back to another Commander Deck Tech video. This time we're going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and that's make a Commander deck around Vhati il-Dal, 4 mana, legendary human I believe, a 3/3 from Tempest. He has a tap ability, target creature's power or toughness is 1 until end of turn. Vhati has always been one of the weirder cards because we don't really have anything else that does this. You can make a creature's power or toughness 1, okay, I guess you can make something weaker and kill it easily. Well, it's a lot easier than it sounds. We have a lot of cards in here that will give -1/-1 to creatures. We have -1/-1 counters. A lot of things that we can do to make this more lethal. And there are some tricks that we can also abuse as well, such as untapping and tapping. And we also have something pretty mean here. So as far as lands go, it's your typical mana fixing that you would expect to see in a Golgari colored deck, green and black. However, we do have an Arcane Lighthouse. This is the one land here that I think serves a purpose outside of mana. You can pay 1 and tap it until end of turn. Creatures your opponents control lose Hexproof and Shroud and can't have Hexproof or Shroud. Since our commander is all about tapping to target a creature, we want to be able to target creatures. We don't want them to have Hexproof or Shroud at least. We have some cards that can help us get more mana. We have Deathrite Shaman. We can tap it to exile a land card from our graveyard to add 1 mana of any color. We can also pay a black and tap it, exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. We can pay a green and tap it, exile target creature card from a graveyard to gain 2 life. So very versatile card. We're going to be killing a bunch of creatures, so don't sleep on that final ability, it could really be handy. And we have Sol Ring of course, we have Arcane Signet, we have Farseek to get us a land, we have Golgari Signet, Nature's Lore to get us a forest, and Sakura Tribe Elder. We have some card draw in here. Since this is about killing creatures, we want something that can synergize with it. We have a Skull Clamp so we can give -1 toughness to our creatures and draw cards, but when it comes to killing creatures, we want to benefit off of that. So we have Cheville, Bane of Monsters. At the beginning of our upkeep, if our opponents control no permanents with bounty counters on them, we put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Whenever a permanent an opponent controls with a bounty counter on it dies, you gain 3 life and draw a card. So just a very efficient creature for 2 mana. We can get them out there pretty early and put those bounty counters on creatures. That way once we get our Vhati il-Dal out there and we start killing them, we get to draw cards and gain that life. We have Sylvan Library because it's just a staple in green, it's fantastic. Phyrexian Arena, similar idea but for black. We have Read the Bones. We get to scry 2 and then draw 2 cards for 3 mana. We get Underworld Connections. Very underrated card, kind of like having another Phyrexian Arena in the deck, but we do have to tap a land to pay a life and draw a card. And then we have Harvester of Souls. Whenever another non-token creature dies, we get to draw a card. So hopefully that's going to happen a lot with our Vhati il-Dal. We have some safety cards in here. I didn't know what else to call this section, but it's just cards that make it easier for us to target our opponent's creatures. So we have Glaring Spotlight. This card is so incredibly underrated. For just 1 mana, it sits on the field. Creatures your opponents control with Hexproof can be the targets of spells and abilities you control as though they didn't have Hexproof. Now this doesn't cover Shroud, but I still think it's great value for 1 mana. We're also able to pay 3 mana and sacrifice it so that creatures we control gain Hexproof until end of turn and are unblockable. So all around, just a great card to have in this deck. We have Shadow Spear, because we can pay 1 mana, permanents our opponents control, lose Hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And then we have Bonds of Mortality. Great card, also underrated. Enters the battlefield, we draw a card, and we can pay a green mana, creatures our opponents control lose Hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. We do have protection for our creatures. We have other ways of protecting them too, so don't worry. We have Aspect of Mongoose. This card is very underrated. I wanted to put a lot of underrated cards in this deck, just to kind of play around with new stuff. But for 2 mana as an aura, enchanted creature can't be the target of spells or abilities, so Shroud. When Aspect of Mongoose is put into a graveyard from play, return it to its owner's hand. So Vhati il-Dal is a big part of what we want to do. We want to tap and get rid of our opponent's creatures. If we don't have them out there, our deck is kind of weird. So we at least want to get back our ways of protecting them too. So we want to get back this Aspect of Mongoose and put it back on them. And then we have Asceticism to pretty much give all of our creatures Hexproof. And then we can pay 2 mana to regenerate a target creature, so it's even more, offering us another way that we can protect our creatures. We do have a search card in here. We have a Demonic Tutor. We have some things in here that can combo with our commander It's nothing super crazy that's going to help us win, but it can help us wipe the board essentially. So let's take a look at the big category of the deck, and that is subtract cards. We want cards in here that are going to make it super easy to kill them off with our Vhati il-Dal. So we have Black Sun Zenith. We can just pay 1 mana into the X, and then we put 1/1/1 counter on each creature. So that's all we really have to do. We don't have to get crazy with this kind of card if we don't want to. Just know that if you need it to be a board wipe, it can be a board wipe. We have Glistening Oil. This is very similar to Aspect of Mongoose. It gives a creature infect, yes, and you're going to want to put this on your opponent's creatures, but at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a -1/-1 counter on the enchanted creature. When it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. So you have something that is going to consistently put -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures. Then we have Golgari Charm, really just focusing on giving all creatures -1/-1 until end of turn, but you can also destroy an enchantment or regenerate each creature you control. We have Blowfly Infestation. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, if it had a -1/-1 counter on it, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So this is a combo. If we have a way to untap our Vhati easily, this is going to make it easy for us to then just start tapping and then killing off other creatures. We have a cool card in here, Caltrops. Whenever a creature attacks, Caltrops deals 1 damage to it. So they most likely won't attack with their best creature because you can then just tap your Vhati to kill it. And then we have Plague Engineer. It enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type your opponents control get -1/-1. So it is very specific to hurting tribal decks the most. But if it's any creature that you know your opponents are going to be playing more of, why not go for it? You can easily just kill them off. We have another great card, Screams from Within. This is another aura that will constantly come back. The enchanted creature gets -1/-1, and whenever it's put into a graveyard, returns Screams from Within from the graveyard to play, which is a nice little interaction with our commander. And then we have Wail of the Nim. This instance also very versatile. We can regenerate each creature we control, but if we entwine it, we can also choose to have it deal 1 damage to each creature and each player. And then we have Karavek the Spiteful. This is when things start to get a little bit more crazy. Other creatures get -1/-1, and that's just static. That's not until end of turn. So if they get -1/-1, you can take your time and just start picking off creatures. It's really cool. Same thing with the Knight of Soul's Betrayal. All creatures get -1/-1. Then we have Soul Snuffers. When it comes into play, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature. It does include your own, so try not to play too many creatures with 1 toughness. It's probably the only bad thing about this deck is that you have a lot of cards like Karavak where it's just going to give -1/-1. There's no point in having a lot of those tiny creatures out there. And then we have Curse of Death's Hold, so you can be very specific with who you want to target. Creatures enchanted player controls get -1/-1. We have Thrashing Wumpus. I don't have Pestilence in here. I just have Thrashing Wumpus in here. I only wanted one of those abilities in the deck because I think we have several ways of doing similar things, and I would rather not lose life myself, but it's a cool creature to have out there. We have Ascendant Evankar. Other black creatures get +1/+1, but non-black creatures get -1/-1. Also very specific, we need opponents who have non-black creatures. Also very specific, but most of the time our opponents are going to have non-black creatures. We have Contagion Engine. When it enters, we put a -1/-1 counter on each creature target player controls. And then we have Endbringer. This card is also fantastic, and I've said this before, but this is yet another underrated card in Commander. It untaps during each other player's untap steps, so you get to constantly do this. It can tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player, so we make a creature's toughness 1, and then we can deal 1 damage to it, killing it off. The other abilities are pretty good too. You can pay a colorless and target creature can't attack or block this turn. You can pay 2 colorless and tap it to draw a card. Then we have Midnight Banshee, has Wither, and at the beginning of our upkeep we put a -1/-1 counter on each non-black creature. Wither's another pretty good ability, there's just not a lot of it. And I didn't want to go Infect, by the way. I didn't want there to be just a ton of Infect creatures that would totally take away from what the deck is really trying to do, and that's put -1/-1 counters and make it easy for us to kill creatures with 1 toughness. And then we have Vilis, Broker of Blood. We can pay a black and 2 life, target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. And whenever we lose a life, we draw that many cards, so a great engine. We have some retrieval in here, and this is kind of like reanimation as well. We're going to have a little bit of both. We have Animate Dead to bring back a creature. We have Regrowth. We have Treasured Find and Eternal Witness. They all pretty much do the same thing. It's just important to have some kind of way to bring back our combo pieces. We have untapped cards in here later. We're going to get to that. It's just so important that we can get a lot of those cards back so that we can continue to do that with our Vhati. And then we have Journey to Eternity. This is great to throw onto your commander or really any good creature, because when that creature dies, we return it to the battlefield under our control. We then get to flip it into Atzal Cave of Eternity. We can pay 5 mana and tap it to return target creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So it's like a better Volrath Stronghold. We then have Necroskitter, also has Wither. Whenever a creature an opponent controls with a -1/-1 counter on it dies, you may return that card to the battlefield under your control. So we have a lot of things that give -1/-1 counters in this deck. Necroskitter allows us to steal them pretty easily. And then we have Sepulchral Primordial. We get to take one creature from each opponent's graveyard and put it into play under our control. That's all on an ETB trigger, so this is a very, very good creature to have for 7 mana. We have 2 haste enablers in here, and I think obviously it's for protection reasons, but the sooner you can use your Vhati's ability, the better off you're going to be, and I think you get haste with Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots. That's great. We have a mean card in here. We have Tree of Perdition. I think most of what the deck is going to do is pretty mean already, but this has to be the meanest card, because all you really need to do is make its toughness 1, and then when you exchange life totals, you're giving someone 1 life instead of 13, which is miserable. And because Vhati can continue to do that, it doesn't matter how big its toughness is afterwards, you can do it to another opponent. We have some untapped cards in here just to untap our Vhati. That's really the only thing we need to untap. We have Instill Energy. This aura is fantastic. The enchanted creature has haste. We can untap the enchanted creature an extra time on each one of our turns. So we get to use that ability again. It's not going to combo infinitely, obviously. It does have that condition, but it's still a great card for only 1 green mana. We have Benefactor's Draft. This card is also pretty good. It's actually quite expensive. I think it was only printed in this set in Commander 2016. You untap all creatures until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls blocks, draw a card. And it also just lets you draw a card anyway. Great card for only 2 mana. It can provide you with a lot of card draw. And then we have Mage Right Stone. We can pay 1 mana and tap it to untap target creature that has an activated ability with tap in its cost. We have Seeker of Skybreak, just a creature that can tap to untap target creature. Then we have Thornbite Staff. This card can combo. The equipped creature has 2 mana and tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature or player, and whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, untap this creature. So this, in combination with something like Karavek the Spiteful, is a combo that will allow you to kill off however many creatures you want to. Since when you tap it, a creature will have 1 toughness and then get -1/-1 from a Karavek. That creature will die, you will get to untap it and do it over again. Then we have 1000-Year Elixir. This card is awesome because it kind of gives a pseudo haste, but it's only for the abilities. We can also pay a mana and tap it to untap target creature. And then we do have a Seedborn Muse because this card is always crazy in Commander. I don't have to remind any of you, but you untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. And to end the deck, we do have some removal in here. We have Tragic Slip. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. In this deck, sometimes that's all you need. But if you do have the Morbid, it gets to be -13/-13 instead. We have Assassin's Trophy, just to deal with pretty much anything. And we have Warping Whale. This is a cool card to have. I always like it when you play a card and it's just, you identify it with a certain deck, because it's just really good in combination with a commander. But one of the modes that you have here to choose from is exile target creature with power or toughness 1 or less. So you can use your Vhati and then exile something. We have Beast Within, Crossing Grip, always reliable. We have Toxic Deluge, kind of the same idea as with Black Sun Zenith. You don't have to pay that much life. You only really have to pay 1 most of the time, and your Vhati will take care of whatever else you need. But Toxic Deluge is just great even if it's not in combination with anything else. And then Casualties of War to get that flexible removal, so we can hit artifacts, creatures, enchantments, lands, and planeswalkers. But overall, that's the deck. I really like Vhati. I haven't really had a chance to play him. I haven't really played against him. Not a commonly played commander. I think most people probably don't even know he exists. But all the way back in Tempest, 1997, you have a pretty interesting Golgari commander that you can explore. So if you enjoyed the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Void here signing off. Hope you all have a wonderful day.